let's try to anticipate what we can do here with John and where he will go. He does have a certain kind of style and brand by which he goes through his off seasons. They do tend to be ones where, he's not often spending a lot of money in free agency. He's wanting to set the stage for the draft so that once he gets to the draft that he is able at that point in time to really truly draft for value, at least especially early in the draft. They might go a little bit more for need later in the draft, but early on they want to be able to draft for value. And you do that by making sure your roster is set up prior to the draft and making that happen. Now, this can create some angst as far as from Seahawks fans are concerned, is because they go, well, you're not going hard enough. You're just trying to kind of pepper everything. It's sort of, throw the numbers game at it as opposed to being precise in how you're looking to, attack the roster development side of it. Let's go into this here without any further ado. Let me get into this. I'm going to do this in kind of 3 different rungs. We're going to look at, clearing cap space, in-house extensions. We're going to look at outside free agents. And then I'm going to show you where I think John would go kind of as far as the draft would be going with all of these moves in front of that. So let's see how good I can go on this. I do appreciate you guys watching today. If you could for me, please hit that like button as you're walking on in the door. I would really appreciate that. And the first order of business that we've got to take a look at here with our Seattle Seahawks before we get to anything else, of course, is going to be the cap situation. Your Seattle Seahawks are right now with the 4th least amount of cap space in the entire NFL at $13.43 million. This is after they had restructured Leonard Williams' contract, saving up about $14 million right there. So still a little bit more work that needs to be done just to get under the cap in order for you to be able to get your business done. So let's go through initially here who are going to be the cap casualties, restructures, which ones do I want to go with here that are going to make the most sense. So releases or trades. Let's start out the gate with this one. And I think you guys are very well aware of most of the names I'm going to mention on this list, as we've talked about quite a few of them on this, being Draymond Jones, Tyler Lockett, both of the Fants, Roy Robertson Harris at $6.6 million, Rayshawn Jenkins at $5.4 million. And then the one trade that I would put into here would be Riq Woolen. A part that we don't talk about with Riq Woolen, probably enough on this, is that Riq actually is making $5.2 million this year. He is not just simply on some cheap 5th-round rookie contract going into the final year at this point. He's actually making some pretty good money. It's not expensive, but it's substantial, and it's 5.2 that you can clear off the books, especially if you are going to trade him and able to get back maybe a 3rd or a 4th-round pick back in return if he's, not as much a part of the long-term plan. So those would be my main cuts that I would be looking to do. Now, this would be getting you pretty good space as far as this goes. And then I'm going to pair this with my in-house re-signings. And we'll get down to some of the bottom numbers on this here in a second, as I'll show you how the numbers play out on this. But your re-signings in-house are going to be Geno Smith at 3 years, $115 million. It does seem like the team is just leaning in that direction at this point. DK Metcalf extended at a 3-year, $88 million. Ernest Jones, 4 years, $44 million. Michael Dixon, heading into the final year of his deal, gets extended here on a 4-year, $15 million deal. And then Charles Cross is the one player from that draft class from a couple of years ago who is rewarded on an extension at 4 years, $80 million. Now, something to keep in mind with all of this is that with the Geno and the DK deal, you're actually going to cumulatively free up about $10 million between the two of those guys if you sign them to a new contract extension. We're going to be able to lower down first-year hits. With Michael Dixon, his cap cost would say about the same for what it's going to be on the books anyway, so extending him doesn't really accomplish much on that. With Charles Cross and with Ernest Jones, I would estimate that the new money on the books, meaning money where we really want to concentrate on here is for 2025, the money that would be on the books is going to be about $10 million extra for the Ernest Jones extension and the Charles Cross extension. Okay, so just keep that number in your mind, because the Geno DK deal, you save $10 million, you get $10 million back in pocket. And then with the Ernest Jones and Charles Cross, it's sort of like negative $10 million off the 2025 cap. Yes, their deals will extend higher into the future, but this is what you're going to have to do if you're going to make any kind of noise at all. I'm not talking like making big, huge splash after splash in free agency. I'm just talking about making one kind of splash in free agency. So these would be a bunch of big contracts you're giving out, 3 contracts over $80 million given out. That certainly would be a sign to the fan base. I think that their commitment is there as far as at least monetarily speaking is concerned. But these would be my only in-house moves. Now, let's go over here to, I want to show you guys something here real quick. A little bit of a cap breakdown on this. So our releases on this cap situation is $59 million. And that's back to that, all those cuts you made plus the trade of Riq Woolen. You get $10 million in cap savings from Geno Smith and the DK on the new deal with them. You're walking into this over the cap $13.4 million. So, and that's the in-house extensions that I just talked about with Charles Cross and Ernest Jones that would comprise about $10 million themselves. So essentially the Geno DK money that you save goes into kind of the Cross Ernest Jones money for the first year of those cap hits. But the way to really, you can break this down on this is take that $59 million. You're going to minus off, you're going to add the 10 that takes it to $69 million. And then you're minusing off the over the cap at 13.4. You're minusing off the 10 for the in-house extensions on the first year of the deal. I'm talking, these are all about the first year of the contract because we don't really got to worry about 26 or 27. We want to laser focus in only on 25 here for this exercise. The next one's going to be outside free agents, and that will be the next part I'll get to here with you guys. So after we've done our releasings, we've done our re-signings, now we're on to the open market and free agency. And so how do I think our Seahawks are going to go? I think it's going to go possibly something a little bit like this. So the first move you've got out the gate, the biggest move, I put him second, but it'd be the biggest move that you would make would be that you would indeed look to make a big splash in free agency. And the guy that I had as my number 2 free agent on our list about a week ago when I ran through this exercise was Drew Dalman. He's a 26-year-old center for the Atlanta Falcons. He's a really good, tough player, a good leader on that line. I know that we're looking at guards a little bit with this, but I think that center could just as likely be where they attack on this one. This frees you up to not have to necessarily be as impelled to move Christian Haynes over to center. He can remain more at right guard and duke it out with the rest of the guys over there. But Drew Dalman gives you a really young player that you know what you're getting, an instant upgrade at the center position, as good as that we've had here since at the very least Max Unger. And the one point I want to make sure that I want to show on this, because sometimes people go, we don't have, we can't do the money. Now, number one, why do I have to go 4 years, $70 million? It's a good question. Why it's got to cost that much, Brandon? Why can't we get off the hook for less than that? Well, let me show you the Creed Humphrey contract, which was signed a year ago. And the way the NFL contracts work is that money doesn't go backwards. If you're next up and you're just as good as the player as the prior player, you're going to make about what that same player made. So you can't really look at this and go, well, we want to take him on a discount. I had to kind of structure this up a little bit on looking at it. And so I had to kind of take the 4-year, $76 million baseline of the Creed Humphrey deal as the baseline of this deal. Now, the good news is, as you can see on the graphic I'm showing here for 2024, the cap number is only going to be $5.51 million on Creed's deal last year. They lowered down the base, a lot of guaranteed money down the line, but the first year hit was only 5. So he signs a 4-year, $76 million deal, but the first year of the cap hit is $5.15 million. And so that's definitely how you can get this kind of deal done. You give him more guarantees, you give him kind of more of the bonus money within there to make this kind of happen from Seattle's perspective of it. But then that also allows you to really lower down the first year of the cap hit, even though this would be a really big, major deal for Seattle to sign with Dalman. So Dalman comes out at 4 years, $70 million to take over your center position. You go for Aaron Banks, familiarity with this scheme, still a relatively young player. I don't think he's really great, but this would be a little bit younger than John's gone recently at the guards positions at times when he looks on the outside looking in like Gabe Jackson or even Laken Tomlinson last year. Banks is a little bit younger, so 3-year, $24 million deal for him over at left guard. Tier Tart, you go get a nose tackle out in free agency from the Chargers. Had a really good year last year, 3-year, $17 million deal. And then you sign a 1-year deal for Elijah Moore and Jordan Lewis. You need some help at wide receiver, and you need some help at cornerback, especially after you've moved Reek Woolen at this point. Now, with Moore and Lewis, you don't have to get caught up on their names. It would be more of, hey, he's going to allot $3 or $4 million to a receiver or to another cornerback, and if you want to look at them as more sort of placeholder kind of things and how they sort of sit with that. So when we go over to the first year hit, as I was talking about before on that, I showed you prior with the Creed Humphrey deal that it was about $5.1 million on the first year hit. With Dalman, I just kind of etched it up a little bit more to $7 million on the first year hit to try to be realistic. Aaron Banks has got $6 million on his first year hit. Tier Tart, $4 million. Elijah and Moore and Jordan Lewis were on 1-year deals, so those are both $4 million a piece. So this is the first year cap hit. You want to concentrate on 2025. To me, that's the most important part of this puzzle when we look at the whole grand scheme of things on this. And so what does this break down as far as the cap goes? So we go back over here to the 2025 cap situation. We started out with $69 million minus the $13.4 million that we were over the cap, minus the $10 million for the in-house extension, minus the $24 million for the outside free agents. That's our kind of our whole formula for this. So how does it all come out in the wash? The way it comes out in the wash is that your remaining cap space would be $21.6 million. This allows you to put $8 million to the 2025 draft, which you got to pay for your draft, guys. That's the way that goes. You need about $6.5 to $7 million of reserve money as well on the books, just for moves that you can make in season. And then I've given them another $6 million that they're going to have with play money that they could utilize around the trade deadline if they want to make a trade deadline move, as far as giving them some flexibility in this situation. So this would be essentially what I would look for them to do, or something along these lines as we go into free agency this offseason. I wouldn't expect many deals, but one major deal to be made, especially to reinforce this offensive line with a guy that you know what you're getting. You're getting a pretty young player, and plug and play day one starter frees you up a lot for the draft, which is a lot of what this will do too as well. Because when you do look at these signings that I've made, both with the extensions and these guys, you're now coming into the draft with, what do you have to hammer? What do you have to pick? You know, what are the positions that they're absolutely a must? You got to go deal with this one. Well, maybe receiver, maybe tight end in that, because you did let go of Fant and you're down 2 tight ends. So there's those 2 there. But everything else across the board sitting pretty good at that point from John's perspective to be able to run the draft however he wants to then run the draft. So let's get over to that. And let me show you where I think John's going to go as far as the draft goes. We go first round, going to stay totally in value in the first round. There's a lot of good edges in this class. John, early in the draft, value. He loves edges in the first round in this kind of place of things, I would believe. And Shamar Stewart is a guy that I could see draw a lot to this team as far as them liking him quite a bit there in the first round. Mike McDonald wants power edges in his defense. It's a requirement. It's something where in a lot of ways this defense kind of starts from that area of things. And right now you don't really have power edges. This is the reason that you made the trade for Trevis Gibson and Roy Robertson Harris. It's because you don't have these guys that he wants in his scheme to do it. Both Mafe and Hall bring their own attributes to play, but they're not pure power edges in what he really wants, and to be able to set those hard edges. A guy like Shamar Stewart would be able to do it. He's got a lot of upside. Kid's just kind of starting to figure it out. I could see the team getting very much hot to trot on him, especially as they're a year out from having to kind of decide on Boye Mafe. And you're going to keep, by the way, you noticed in this deal, I kept Uchenna Nwosu on the books. He was not part of who I had released off the books. So there's not a desperate need here at edge, but you're getting kind of ahead of the situation a year out by getting Shamar Stewart in there. And then you've got a hell of a 4 stack in there moving into next year between Hall, Mafe, Uchenna, and Shamar Stewart coming in there kind of learning the ropes. Donovan Jackson into round 2, tackle guard combination for your Seahawks would be a really nice pick for them. You have Aaron Banks, Dahlman. You bring this kid in to duke it out then with Banks and kind of let the best man win. If he's good to go day one, he overtakes a guy like Banks and you feel bad about putting the money in as you did, but you'll get out after that deal after a year if you had to. If Banks comes in there and he's ready to go day one, it takes time for Donovan Jackson to develop. You've got a little bit of that time to let that kind of figure itself out, sort itself out. Seahawks come back to another Ohio State player in the 3rd round, Will Howard. They go get their quarterback this year in that 3rd round period. Come back in the 4th and address the tight end with Jackson Haas, the best run blocking tight end in this draft, in my opinion. A guy that also probably could be utilized with some fullback snaps. We heard Clint Kubiak talking about this in the press conference last week. Jake Majors, center out of Texas, another guy that you bring in there at this point. I know you signed Dahlman, but as I said, I think you're going to try to, with this now, move more of Christian Haynes back to right guard rather than transitioning him over to center. And now you have a Jake Majors and Oluwatimi sort of duke it out for who's going to be the best backup behind Dahlman. Arande Gadsden, H-back, tight end from Syracuse, very productive for them last year. Jimmy Horn, Nazir Stackhouse, wide receiver, defensive tackle in round 6. I don't know if those guys will necessarily be there at that point, but they may. You never know with these drafts. And then a cornerback, Tommy Hill in the 7th round was who I looked to go grab right there. So something along these lines where, again, you've walked in this draft not being impelled by necessarily need. I know I drafted a couple of tight ends, which fits to John's track record as well, right? He's shown in recent drafts that he will double down on positions, double down on receivers, double down on cornerbacks, double down on tackles. You know, he will do that in certain drafts. So I could see, especially with this draft being what I would consider to be probably the deepest draft for tight ends in about 15 to 20 years, I really could see him going back in this direction of things and picking up these guys. So you've got Dahlman there at center. You've got Banks duking it out with Donovan Jackson at left guard. Your right guard's got a triple stack there of guys to let them all fight it out. Put them in a room and see who comes out. Put them in a room, let them duke it out and see who comes out of it. You'll have Christian Haynes. You'll have Bradford, Sa'atoa Luamea, also all in the mix of these guys at that point to try to kind of see who can, maybe give you some good snaps out there. You also get in Donovan Jackson, I think, with a guy who's shown you can play left tackle, that absolutely then he can play some right tackle too if you're going to need that in a pinch with Abraham Lucas, which maybe is a possibility, though he does sound like he has been able to, maintain his health pretty well here. Let me know what you guys think, though. Are you guys feeling this kind of offseason from your Seattle Seahawks? Would this kind of offseason, do you think, take them to a contending status of things? Does there need to be more? Do you feel like they should hammer that guard position more than just a Banks? Save a little bit more money and double dip. And I certainly wouldn't be upset at all if this team wanted to, rather than kind of go for a couple of those low-end deals around the one major deal, to just sign the two major deals with both a center and a left guard. Where you go, okay, we're set up. We've got our line good to go. These guys are vets. They're going to come in. They're going to be ready to roll. It's not going to take a lot of time for them to have a learning curve. And I can understand that being a bit of an approach that you'd like to see them take too. I was just trying again with this was, rather than getting it into more of a kind of, as I've done these in the past, sometimes a little bit more of a wish off season. I really want to try to make this more of a, here's an expectation of what I think we'll get from John from an off-season approach.